We're going to start. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining this Expert Advisory Community webinar. This is Beth Schlachter, and I'm here with the Secretariat team in DC. I want to welcome all of you, and I guess I should say good morning or good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you're calling in or connecting from. So thank you for your ongoing interest. We wanted to take some time to open up a discussion with you, given all of the enormous change that's happened in our sector in recent months, but also to share some exciting news and to invite your partnership in some of the new initiatives and efforts that are taking place both here through FP 2020, but with the broader partnership globally as well. So I believe you all have an agenda with you. And so we'll be talking today a bit about the current political and financial landscape. And I'm going to share with you an update on the planning so far for a family planning summit that will take place in London this July. And I think some of you in the U.S. may have been a part of a consultation we had last week on this, so if so, my apologies if there's a bit of duplication for you, but I'm happy to share what may be new information for the rest of our colleagues on the line. Then we'll be talking with you about our new focal point structure because we're adding civil society focal points in every FP 2020 commitment country this year. And our colleagues as well, and many of you on the line, have been working on rights-based family planning and expanding understandings and programs, including CIPs, to explicitly incorporate and address rights within the program design context. And so we're happy to share some exciting developments in that work as well. And then we have an update on the reference group and then plenty of time for a Q&A to hear from all of you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rati, who's going to share some housekeeping and technical information for how the webinar will run this morning.
Thanks, Beth, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us in the webinar room today. We have had a couple of chat messages come through that some people may be having audio issues. If you could just message that into the chat and we will address that. But just to sort of go over a few housekeeping notes here. Again, thanks for joining us. Before we get started, I'd just like to take you through a few points. First, you should be seeing in front of you a presentation, and to the right of the presentation, 3 pods. Attendees, a pod where you can submit questions, and also a chat pod. For questions, we encourage you to submit questions at any point during the webinar. During the Q&A, you'll also have the ability to unmute yourself by pressing *6 to speak if you're on the phone or use your mic audio. In addition, if you have any other questions during the course of the webinar, please use the chat feature to let us know or submit your question in the Q&A pod. One last note, this presentation is being recorded and will be made available to you after. And with that, back to you, Beth.
Okay, thank you, Rati. So we wanted to open today's discussion recognizing that many of you are working with organizations that may be feeling an impact from the global gag rule or the Mexico City policy and either the funding or operational constraints that are resulting because of that new policy. We also recognize that there's been some shifting as well within the political landscape of support for family planning given the U.S.'s leadership role over these past many decades as we wait for really the Trump administration to clarify exactly what they would like USAID to do with their support. And as that's still unarticulated at this point, and USAID seeks to implement the Mexico City policy along the guidelines for family planning that had been in place at the end of the Bush administration. I think we're still in this point of tension, waiting for some of that resolution to come out. But that said, there have been some very positive developments from the global community to take forward this momentum, including the very positive She Decides conference that our Netherlands and Belgian partners held in the month of February, which not only generated new financial commitments for family planning, but I think was really a shot in the arm for what our sector needed to give an opportunity for all of us to rally around the positive and the partnership that we have that's in place. And so from FP 2020, you'll be hearing several of us talk across the morning, including when we talk about the reference group later on, about the decisions that we've taken to ensure that we maintain our sort of big tent approach to collaboration, both very much valuing and providing a space for the U.S. and for USAID to continue as a core convener of FP 2020 and a valuable leadership partner, including for that really critical technical expertise and leadership at a partnership level in countries, but also for the range of our colleagues, including those who are feeling an impact from the Mexico City policy, to all remain working together, both in the context of the reference group and critically at the country level. So these relationships continue. FP 2020 is very much continuing apace. And what I really want to do here is just invite an opportunity for during the Q&A session to hear from you about ways that you think that the FP 2020 partnership should be operating, perhaps adjusting, ideas around our messaging over the past few months. We would really value your feedback on, excuse me, on our role in the family planning family, and also what we can do to be a positive presence during this time of transition. So that's the goal of having this agenda item on here, is really to transition us and to lay that marker for the Q&A. So as Rati said, you can submit your questions anytime online. So if something occurs to you as we're speaking this morning, please do take a moment to send in that question so that we can start out the Q&A with things that have occurred to you during the course of this morning. So with that now, I will transition to sharing with you a bit of information about the upcoming summit in London on family planning. So we're sort of carefully calling it the Summit in London on Family Planning at this point, because honestly we're still looking for a final name for it, recognizing that the last London Summit sort of stands on its own with that title, and not wanting to create confusion, and also wanting to say that, you know, this partnership is 5 years in since then, and we've all learned a lot together and grown together. So ideas on what we might want to call this as well are also welcome. So please do feel free to share that if something occurs to you. But the idea of the summit really started last in the wake of the political transitions in the UK. As a way of just a conversation around, do we need to have another high-level political moment to ensure that we are articulating that continued ongoing support, again at really high levels, for family planning. And then given the political transitions in the U.S. as well, and the She Decides moment, that all sort of transitions now into, we really feel the community is ready and wanting a bigger moment. One that's not only political, but gives us all a chance to assess the progress that we've made over these 5 years and to pull out some of the learning about where we've been able, through these partnerships, to expand and accelerate our progress. So I think it is going to be an exciting moment and a great opportunity for the community to come together and to really feel good about the incredible progress of 50 years of family planning, building toward the 300 million current users that we have, and then to be able to share across the partnership and critically among countries those lessons of what's really working, so that we can try to bring some of these ideas to scale in more countries. So we'll be sharing with you through email, if we haven't already, the concept note for the summit itself. It's going to take place on July 11 in London, and again, it's a broad partnership moment, and we will be inviting, or have been inviting, FP 2020 commitment countries to decide how they would like to come and share their progress with the broader community. But in preparing for this summit, we have focused on 4 key areas that we would like to be sort of the focus of what's really shared and articulated during the summit itself. The first, clearly, is recognizing the shift in the global financing landscape, and to see how, if there are opportunities for expanded financing solutions, building on both the GFF as one idea, but also looking at country partnerships as well, in terms of how do we inspire greater domestic resource mobilization where there's potential to do that through sort of partnership approaches. So there are conversations going on with countries about how that might be happening within their specific context. And here there's also a focus on commodity purchase as well, and how that can be explicitly sort of accelerated or more resources put toward that from country partners as possible. We'll also be looking at strengthening supply chains and expanding the range of contraceptive methods that are available to women. So we're talking about a broader method mix and more sustainable delivery systems and solutions. And here we're talking with private sector as well, both at the country level as well at a global level. And RHSC did this brilliantly during their last meeting in Seattle, where they brought in some partners, and those who are working in Seattle, Amazon, and some other big providers, Starbucks, who have supply chain issues as a core of their business model that we could maybe learn from as a family planning community. So how can we do more of that kind of work and also take those learnings to the country level? And of course, we're looking at how we empower young people to thrive, and this critical area is where have we made progress in dealing with some of the cultural barriers or provider biases or just sort of structural problems that keep young people from accessing the contraception that they need, and how do we expand their learning through some innovative partnerships as well so that we're reaching young people with the messages that they need in order to manage their lives. And here we're also looking at how to reach the hardest to reach, not just young people, but how does the family planning development community reach out to the humanitarian actors who are working to provide reproductive health in crisis situations, both protracted refugee situations, but also at the onset of emergencies and then throughout. And this entails both providing contraceptive supplies beyond pills and condoms. Condoms always remain critical, but how do we expand so that there's potential for LARCs? How do we ensure access to emergency contraception when we know that so many women during times of crises become victims of sexual violence, and access to emergency contraception is so critical during that time? I think there's a lot that our development community has learned, and we hear a lot of I think, desire to bridge this relief to development divide, but how can we actually work together when we recognizing there's a lot of siloed funding streams to share learnings and really expand access in these humanitarian situations, recognizing that critical partners such as USA or UNFPA are working in both development and relief and are often the cluster lead under the UN system in these crisis times. So we hope that by bringing the humanitarian discussion to this audience in London that we'll be able to hear from one another and learn and to be able to take some real steps there as well. So this conference will also be linking to a number of other processes that have already happened or are going to be happening this spring, including the She Decides conference. So there's work at the highest levels to bring both that partnership and that energy from the She Decides into the family planning conference, respecting and very much appreciating that family planning was within the context of SRHR in She Decides, and bringing that SRHR lens to our conference as well. Then our Canadian partners have emerged with incredible support as well, which they announced at She Decides, and they'll also be hosting a global adolescent conference, a global adolescent health conference, in mid-May in Ottawa. So we'll be linking to that conference as well and bringing in some of the learnings and energy and enthusiasm from that conference to the London Summit. And then, as all of you know, this year is the AU's year of the demographic dividend, and the AU Heads of State Conference or Summit will actually be the week before the summit in London. And so we'll be pulling in, we'll be looking to have explicit statements of support for family planning and expanding the demographic dividend outcomes through the AU Summit, and then pulling those statements into the London Summit as well, so that we're really seeing a range of energy and enthusiasm from global partners and we can pull this all together in a coherent way in London. So who will be participating in this summit? We're looking at those who are making strong statements of commitment, sharing successes, new partners. So for those partners who are in a position or feel that now is a good time to be reassessing their original FP 2020 commitments and maybe expanding them, particularly those who made their original commitments early on in 2012. Are those still fresh? Are they still relevant? Do they need updating? We'll also be inviting new countries to join, and at this point we're hopeful that we'll have as many as 3 new country partners by July. And we're looking to work with the private sector as well, and here the UN Foundation is leading our group to really look at global partners and to look at corporate social responsibility opportunities. We've seen some shift in terms of partners who are willing and able to speak out for family planning, including the CEO of Tumblr here in the U.S. who announced a partnership with Planned Parenthood. And we've also had Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook who also stepped out and supported reproductive health. So we're seeing an opening there, I think, through some of the protest and some of the street energy that we've seen from women and those who support women. And that's, I think, opening a door for more private sector explicit support for sexual reproductive health and rights. And so we're hoping to push against that and see what we can bring to the summit itself. We're looking for parliamentary engagement, and critically, we still need to get to the question of CSO engagement and how we'll bring the SRHR community, the family planning CSO community, to the summit itself. So there's a group that's just forming around side events and what that CSO engagement looks like. There's still time to do that work. We want to make sure that that door is open and CSO representation and ideas and partnership in developing the summit are available. So I'll stop there for the summit, and again, welcome your questions on that. When we get to the Q&A, please do feel free to shoot those in. And with that, I'll turn to my colleague Eva Ross, who's our Director for Country Support, and she's going to share with you our efforts to bring in CSO focal points to our focal point systems in the countries. Eva, over to you.
Thank you, Beth, and good morning and good afternoon to all of you. As Beth mentioned, at the Secretariat, we've been working over the past few months and in consultations with many of you that have joined today, as well as our current focal points in country. We've been looking at how we can best formalize civil society's participation in the focal point structure. Of course, recognizing that in country, that engagement with civil society was taking place. And that was taking place in different ways depending on structures that exist in countries, whether it's through a family planning technical working group or some other mechanism. But we felt it was very important to formalize that role. And to that end, and with the help of our colleagues at the OP who currently already have civil society focal points, we've had some learnings and have been rolling out in a phased approach on how we'll do this across the 38 commitment-making countries. As you all know, the focal point structure is really the foundation for FP 2020's country support and outreach. And just as a quick reminder, existing focal points represent the government, as well as donor focal points from USAID, UNFPA, and at times in some countries also DFID. And I just wanted to say a special hello to some of our focal point colleagues that are on the line from Tanzania, Bangladesh, Nigeria, and Malawi today. And so the process right now, as I mentioned, is in a phased approach, and we are currently doing this for our 11 countries that have made commitments in the Asia region. And this is due to the upcoming focal point workshop that will be held in Manila in mid-May. So right now, we have made quite good progress. The focal points in country, along with civil society in that country, have really worked through ways to nominate that representative. And that's really coming from civil society representatives in that country and in conversations with the existing focal points. And so I'm really pleased to say that so far we have now received nominations from 7 of the 11 countries, and we're really excited to work with these new focal points and our current focal points to get them all prepared for the workshop coming up in Manila. And then next up, in the next month, we'll be rolling this out also with our countries in Anglophone Africa and Francophone Africa, again with the aims to make sure that these new focal points are duly engaged and oriented into the structure for the upcoming other regional focal point workshops. Namely the Anglophone Africa one, we're looking at November, December dates, and we'll make sure to share those with all of you once we've been able to confirm them. And for Francophone Africa, we're looking at early next year. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Eva. Now I'd like to introduce you to Sandra Jordan, who many of you know very well, and she's our Senior Director for Global Advocacy, Rights, and Youth, and Sandra's here to talk about our rights-based family planning efforts. So Sandra, over to you.
Thanks very much, Beth, and greetings and good morning and good afternoon to all, and I think good night to some. Hopefully this is good news and will help you rest well or get you through the day really strongly. We have been working very hard in integrating a rights-based frame into family planning programs over the last year, and I just wanted to give you a bit of a progress report on this. And just for those who may not be aware, the 2012 London Summit, with its ambitious goal of reaching an additional 120 million women and girls by 2020, also strengthened awareness of the importance to focus programs on the rights of women and girls in family planning. So the program began growing and awareness began growing, and early in FP 2020, the Secretariat's life, rights were the focus of one of the 4 working groups, along with youth, market dynamics, and country, and I'm sorry, people will kill me for this, performance for PME. I'm just completely, thank you very much. I got to the P and just stopped. So anyway, we had many significant contributions from the very dedicated group that were on this working group, and they established the principles of the rights-based family planning, for rights-based family planning that guide us today, and they also worked on an advocacy guide to help civil society gauge if clinics in their communities are client-centered and respectful. And they did many other very important things. But with the phase out of the working groups, rights were added as a program focus for the Secretariat, along with youth and global advocacy, and the work has continued to advance. Last spring, with the help of many, many valuable implementing partners and others, we convened the first of several meetings to work with those from many disciplines and organizations to assess the state of rights in family planning program. 2 were held in conjunction with USAID and the Interagency Gender Working Group, and saw us beginning an insightful discovery around how the rights frame could be applied through the gender lens, and we discussed the issue through the context of reproductive empowerment. And these conversations continue, and the gender group continues to be very interested in advancing this process. Then last June, we held a global meeting in London to review the work to date and assess the potential for rights-based family planning, the gaps, and to figure out how we can all work together across the globe to realize the promise. As we have discovered, there are many, many projects, and I think we discover more practically every day, are approaching family planning programs by interrogating their programs through the quality of care, but seeing where rights are added. And as we are applying this rights-based approach, the efforts are bringing increasing evidence about what it takes to operationalize and then measure this approach in order to solidly demonstrate the difference it can make. The evidence is not as robust as yet because a lot of the projects are still under evaluation, but advances are being made, and more advances are expected as programs are developed and examined. And so we will continue reporting our findings to advance the field. And as we build the evidence base, we are also working to increase understanding and build up rights literacy amongst our country partners, given that we are working with them to develop the cost and implementation plans and their action plans. We do have a meeting actually this afternoon to share a toolkit that's been developed to help walk people through the process and to kind of demystify rights and show how it can be operationalized and included in these plans. And we're beginning the feedback from our core conveners and from colleagues in the country program. So once we get their feedback and their take on all this, the toolkit will be finalized and we'll be able to share it with folks going forward. to get all of this information, I keep promising you, we've launched a website devoted to rights-based family planning, and we are grateful to the many, many experts, advocates, providers, and clients who have made this website and all of our efforts possible. So as I announce this website to you, I want you to join us and become part of this community and part of a contributor to this community. And we are supporting your work and our work by providing a platform to house the critical knowledge based on rights-based family planning and sharing, as I've mentioned, the latest research, program efforts, and tools, as well as meeting notes and other findings, and providing a forum for the exchange of ideas, observations, and inspiration. I hope you find this website an invaluable resource, and that this community of practice can help your understanding of the importance of this issue and why your involvement is important. So please do join us. We see this website as an ever-growing resource where you can add to your knowledge or add your knowledge to the principles and practices of rights-based family planning and share your thoughts. And we're going to launch listservs. We're going to be having webinars, which we will be announcing in a few days. And we will broadly distribute this announcement and going forward. So look for that information, that announcement. And I got a note just now saying that Rati put the website link in the chat box, so check it out. Visit the site, share it with your team, sign up, and feel free to send questions, requests, etc. We very much appreciate your feedback and look forward to continuing this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandra. We really are excited to launch this initiative, and so as always your feedback is very much appreciated, including how the website functions for you. So if you have ideas about or feedback on what's working or not working, or if it's navigable so that you can find the resources that you want, please let us know. We really do value your insights. So I'm going to take a moment to give you an update now on the reference group and transitions. If you receive our monthly newsletter, you will have seen yesterday that we're announcing this year's cohort for the reference group. For those of you who aren't as familiar with what our reference group is, it is the governance body for the FP 2020 process, and it draws from governments, multilateral organizations, civil society, donor agencies, and the private sector. And it is a very collaborative group that works to harmonize investment activities among government, donors, and civil society to better support national strategic priorities and to drive towards sustainability of country ownership and reduce the range of barriers to women and girls in terms of accessing and using contraceptives. It also is the sort of advocacy and accountability mechanism for the FP 2020 movement at the global level, recognizing that country accountability remains key to progress. But this is the group that really looks at what we're doing toward reaching our goal of increasing access and providing quality services, higher quality services, greater method mix, to the clients who are counting on us within the global development space. And it helps set the overall strategic direction that drives coordination among partnership stakeholders, including for the Secretariat itself. So as from the beginning, the reference group is co-chaired or continues to be co-chaired by Dr. Babatunde Oshutman of the UNFPA and Dr. Chris Elias from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And this year, though, we've increased the composition of the group so that we've included more country seats and expanded CSO participation. We've included a leader from the faith-based community. You've seen Professor Ragab from Egypt. And we've also increased the number of countries, as I said, who are representatives. So we have ministers of health now from Burkina Faso, the DRC, India, Myanmar, Nigeria, the Philippines, and Uganda. And the Burkina Faso seat is also a representative seat for the Ouagadougou Partnership countries. And the Ouagadougou Partnership Secretariat remains a member in terms of support staff for ensuring that Ouagadougou perspectives and learnings for West Africa are front and center in all of our meetings. We're also excited that representatives from the Government of Canada, The Pop Council and again the Faith to Action Network through Professor Ragab have joined. Julia Bunting will be representing the Pop Council. So it's really a very happy thing to have her rejoin, since she and Monica Kerrigan, when Monica was at Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, really drove the original London Summit and the creation of FP 2020 as a process and a movement as well. So we're happy to have Julia back in the heart of what we do. We're also looking to add an additional seat to ensure that we have a Global South perspective on rights and women's empowerment as well. And for a number of reasons, that's been a bit more challenging than we had anticipated. So I want to invite all of you as well to perhaps share your ideas on who it is that we might invite to fill this seat. We're looking for somebody who would be connected to global networks, or at least regional networks, so that we're bringing not only their personal perspectives and credibility, but also the ability to work with and expand beyond partnerships as well. So I just wanted to open that up to hear your ideas on who it is that we might want to invite to join the reference group as well. So as you know, the reference group membership does rotate annually, and we're trying to ensure that we have a diverse range of stakeholders that are represented over time. So you can find a full list of both who has been on the reference group, who's rotated off, and including those who are currently on the reference group on our website. So to look ahead, the reference group obviously will be working with us to support the summit development, and we'll be hosting a sort of opportunistic reference group meeting on the heels of that summit for those who will be participating in London. The reference group has already had one call this year, and there's some coordination going on with regard to how people will work together around World Bank spring meetings, since many partners will be here for those, to ensure that family planning issues remain front and center, not only in GFF discussions, but also in the many conversations that will take place throughout that important week of meetings. Our main convening for the reference group, however, will be this fall in Nigeria. We're looking to host at least one meeting a year in a partner country. So we've already met in India. Last year we had a very successful meeting in Tanzania. We're very grateful to our Tanzanian government counterparts and USAID and UNFPA for helping to co-host that meeting there. And for AFP, who really helped to have an incredible meeting with local CSO partners. So as we use the coming months to build up to that meeting in Nigeria, we're looking to work with partners there to really make this sort of a run-up to the meeting and not have the meeting just be a moment in time, but rather to work with multiple layers within the government and within civil society, implementing partners, service delivery partners, to be able to have, to do some work to expand access, expand CIPs. There's a lot of work there in terms of using the data that's available to draft these critical state-level CIPs. So we invite your partnership during that process as well. And one of the practices that we've included in all of our convenings that we host in a partner country is that we reserve that last day, or sometimes if we can, the first day, to meet with civil society so that we have an opportunity to either prepare for and bring in civil society perspectives to the meeting, or to share out the outcomes of the meeting with civil society and to convene all partners together, including our focal points in that country. So we've been able to do that in countries like Uganda, in Tanzania, in Kenya most recently, and we'll be doing that as well in Nigeria and when we go to the Philippines for our focal point workshop in May. And here we had a question already from Jose Mateo de la Cruz, who's from the Philippines, who's asked if EAC members will be a part of the focal point workshop. So Jose, we will be looking to you to work with us to develop this meeting with CSOs that will take place on May 11th in Manila, so that we can share the learnings from that conference, or from the workshop as well, since it's a regional workshop for focal points. But we'll also take that opportunity while we're in the Philippines to meet with you and your civil society colleagues, and to have the Philippines focal points, government and civil society and donor, present in that CSO meeting day. We look for your partnership in developing that as well. So that was our last agenda item before we shift to Q&A. And in addition to Jose's question, we have a few that have come in. So I'll start with those. And again, we do invite you to submit your questions through the pod, and we'll just start to work through those. If I don't fully resolve your question, please put back a second one as a follow-up. And if we don't get to everybody during this Q&A, then we'll certainly get back to you in writing afterwards. So Cecilia Kihara has asked who's coordinating CSO participation at the summit and how do we engage and participate. And so at this point, DFID has taken the lead in trying to pull together representatives from civil society networks. They've met with UK civil society already, and as I mentioned, we had a meeting here in the US as well. So we're going to be pulling in the civil society representatives from the reference group, so that would be IPPF, MSI, Pop Council. It's also now Faith to Action Network, and we have Margaret Balaji from Nigeria, who has encumbered the youth reference group seat that we started last year. So those 5 members will be part of this group. And we're looking for nominations as well to ensure that we have regional representation and US-based participation as well. So if you're interested in perhaps functioning within that role, then please do let us know. And we here at the Secretariat will continue, since we're here in DC, to engage with US-based partners. So if there's more we can do there, we would love to hear your ideas. But what DFID are hoping to pull together is a smaller group that will then liaise out with the broader CSO networks so that they can keep this sort of a communication chain, communication loop up and running, but not make that core group too heavy or cumbersome to be able to operate. So I have a question here from Zambia, from Harriet. I can't read your writing, Lauren. Mwinga, thank you. Sorry. That's all right. It says, we don't seem to have connections within Southern Africa to FP 2020. How do we engage? Well, Harriet, in Zambia, we do have focal points, and we can share with you directly the names of the focal points so that you know who they are. We'll also be bringing the next focal point workshop for Anglophone Africa likely to a Southern African country. And we will be pulling in, then we'll be replicating the process or learning from our process in Asia to open up a focal point seat in each country to civil society. So there's an opportunity for you to push yourself forward or one of your colleagues from your networks to be that focal point in Zambia to get it at exactly this. In some countries, the focal points are working really seamlessly through their family planning technical groups already with civil society, but in other places it's not working quite as well. So that's the reason that we've included this civil society seat within the focal points so that we can help to bridge these disconnects. So we'll be reaching out to you to ensure that you hear when we're rolling out this process in the coming months for the Anglophone Africa countries. We just wanted to take a beat as we do this in Asia to learn what worked, to see if we need to make some adjustments. And again, we've shared with you, I think, our concept note for civil society engagement. So we'd love your feedback on that so that we make this as productive as possible when we roll it out in Africa in the coming months. So then we have a question from Alvin Dacus, and he asks, are other EAC members in other countries being engaged by FP 2020 country teams? Philippe Dolt, Philippine Department of Health. Yet Lauren and I are going to work on writing and understanding each other. She's passing me notes as you pull them in. So it's the Philippine Department of Health, not the Philippine Dolt. Not aware of two of the EAC members who are Filipino. And that's understandable. We haven't been sharing with governments who is on the EAC because we wanted to keep this body independent and not linked into government processes. So again, we now have a civil society focal point, Dr. Junice Melgar, and she is going to be representing civil society within the Philippine contingent. So I would encourage you to liaise with Dr. Junice to make sure that she's aware of your interest and your engagement in the EAC as well so that we can knit these together. But again, in creating the EAC, we didn't want this to be a process that linked back through governments, but rather to keep it an open forum for global collaboration that brings in country perspectives. If you have some thoughts about that and what would be most useful to you, we welcome the opportunity to hear from you, and we also look forward to meeting you in Manila in May when we're there. So we have another question from Fatu Ndai, who's asked, what is CSO focal point selection process? So Fatu, we shared with you the concept note yesterday in the invitation to this webinar, so I encourage you to look at that. But what we've tried to do is to establish with the focal points we're already working with that we wanted to create a process for opening this up, but we didn't want to dictate what that process would be. But we wanted to ensure that the government focal points and the donor focal points also weren't the ones selecting who from civil society would be that voice, but rather that they would launch a process in country where civil society would engage with one another to decide amongst themselves who would best represent civil society perspectives, and then to share that name back with us. So we want to make this a civil society-driven process and not one that's constrained by government perspectives, but somebody who can work within that team in order to move things forward, which I recognize in some places can be a very delicate balance. Again, once you've read that concept note, we shared it with you because we really want to hear your feedback. So please do write back to us and share that if you have ideas about how we can do this better. Again, we're just launching this in Asia so that we're doing it in Asia first because that's our first focal point workshop, but we really do want to learn from this process about how we can make this most effective and seamless for you in countries as well. So Alvin Dacus has also asked if EAC members can also be CSO focal points. Absolutely. That's up to your country network discretion in terms of who you all feel would be the most effective civil society focal point to put forward. And then hello to Patrick Musengi, who I think I saw last in Mozambique, who's basically the focal point engagement. Hold on just a sec. Sorry. I just can't read that. Important. So he's asking that, he's saying that it's important for that focal points for civil societies commit to engaging directly with youth. And how can this happen? So we couldn't agree more, Patrick. And we continue to include youth in all of our local convenings and on the agenda for absolutely every one of our meetings. Whether it be a focal point workshop, our performance monitoring and evidence, our data group who just met in Kenya, looked at youth data and issues related to that. We make it a point of all of our conversations with each of the countries. So youth are in absolutely everything that we push out from this level, and we encourage and will encourage all of our focal points to be meeting with youth networks to prepare for the focal point workshop so that they can bring those perspectives when they come and work through their country action plans for the next 12 to 18 months. So we encourage you to also reach out to the focal points. I know that isn't always successful. I know that it isn't easy. If you're not getting a response, let us know. We'll push from this end as well to continue to ask that they meet with youth focal points and bring those perspectives into each meeting. Again, it's working better in some places than others, but we want to be your partner in this effort, and I know you're working, many of you are working closely with Emily Sullivan here at the Secretariat, who is our Youth Outreach Manager, and we will continue to try to sort of open this up from all angles so that we do get both your participation and your voice in all of these important meetings. And Patrick, I think you had a second question about youth participation at the London Summit. You want to know more? I do too. I think that we're not at the point of deciding what that has been. There's very much an intention to get to that. It's just not something that's been resolved yet. But you have my commitment that this is very much front and center on the list, and there's a group, in fact, that's working on youth issues for the summit itself among the core conveners. The core conveners remain USAID, UNFPA, DFID, and Gates, along with the UN Foundation. So it will be something that you're hearing more about. I think they're just a couple weeks away from reaching out. And good morning to Coley Gray, who's asked for a process for NGOs to join formal planning for London. So what we're asking as well is for regional representation. FE 2020 will continue to host consultation so that we're sharing information with all of you as well. But we do need to get to the point where we have a decision around who might be best placed within U.S. networks to be able to represent civil society in these ongoing discussions. So I think we clearly need to have, and we will launch from the Secretariat, maybe a more formal process for people to sort of nominate themselves, or for maybe the family planning collaboration that's already taking place within the CSOs to come up with a name or somebody who has the time and capacity to do this. But we welcome your ideas on it, and we'll be also opening up again a conversation on this next week with all of you. So Rita Badiani has asked, how is FP 2020 looking for LAC contribution in the summit? Thank you, Rita. I'm really glad that you asked this question. One of the things we're hoping to do in the next week or so is to reach back to the steering committee who organized the LAC Family Planning Summit in Cartagena last September and ensure that they're lashed up for this as well. There are 4 countries in LAC that are of the 69 focus countries for FP 2020, but none of those countries have yet made an FP 2020 commitment. So in terms of the structure of the summit, in terms of working with countries who have made FP 2020 commitments, remains a challenge since there are no LAC commitment-making countries. So if that can't be resolved in the shorter term, then we do need to come to terms with how the region will be present, because the other piece of the summit is that it's really focused on those who have made commitments to progress. So how can that be captured within the family planning movement in Latin America in a substantive way that really demonstrates how work has been done to sort of make progress over time? So I welcome your partnership in discussing that, and as I said, we'll be reaching out to the steering committee as well to get their ideas. So do feed your thoughts both to us and to those who helped prepare that meeting so that we can figure out a way that Latin America is present this time at this summit, since we know that that was not successful the last time around and we do not want to replicate that. So those are the questions that we have right now. Oh, sorry, there's another one from Desmond Atanga, who's asked, how will one faith-based reference group connect ideas of all faiths? Professor Ragab is a member of the Faith to Action Network, and that network does have representatives from all faiths within their construct, within their organizational framework. And the reason we selected Professor Ragab was exactly because of his commitment to be that liaison with other faiths within that network. Because you're exactly right, we can't expect one person of one faith to be speaking for all faiths. Nor do we, though, have the space to bring in representatives from all faiths. So this is why we selected a very credible network who has a long history of working together effectively across all faiths towards shared perspectives. And Professor Ragab is committed to representing those perspectives as a reference group member. Clearly, as a Muslim, he'll be bringing those particular perspectives as well, but he's very committed to this sort of construct in which he works through his network, and we very much are looking forward to working with him there as well. If you have other ideas, again, we welcome your feedback on that as well. So I'll take a pause because I think that's it for the questions that we have right now. But just want to give some space in case a few additional or last-minute questions come in. I think we have. Well, we have part of a question. Okay, I think Marie Ba has asked how we plan on using the existing CSOs within the Ouagadougou Partnership. So one of our core values at FP 2020 is that we not replicate or we not duplicate existing systems so that we become redundant. Our agreement with the Ouagadougou Partnership is that we very much work with their structure And so if, I recognize that. So if you are already, and I believe you are, Marie, a CSO representative within the focal points for the Ouagadougou Partnership, be rolling in that same framework into the FP 2020 framework as well. We won't be creating different systems or parallel systems within countries. We will be having, as you saw on the original slide, our next focal point workshop for Francophone Africa, which includes the Ouagadougou Partnership and other countries like DRC and Cameroon and Madagascar. So that won't happen until about a year from now, but we very much look forward to working with you and then inviting in new Francophone focal points from those other countries who do not currently have them. But we won't be creating a different system. We'll be building on the OP. We also have another question from Alvin Dacus, who asks if EAC members form into subgroups or committees to work on specific issues or concerns, including health professionals, youth, or faith-based. So yes, Alvin, we've invited that in the past. We do have members working on youth issues, and you can reach out to Emily Sullivan if you're not a part of those conversations already. And Sandra Jordan has worked with many EAC members on rights issues as well. And I encourage everyone to reach out to Sandra if you would like to work on those issues. If you feel that there are other subgroups that the EAC would like to convene around and move forward, we would welcome that input, and we would be happy to coordinate those conversations. So please do let us know. And I also encourage you to reach out to other EAC members as well to see what interest is and if there can be some alignment around individual ideas, since many of you know each other and already work together as well. But do put those ideas forward to us, and we're happy to take them up and to see if there's interest across the EAC to engage on specific sub-issues. Okay. So I'll pause here again to see if any additional questions come in. So Mohammed Bundida has asked, what will be the role of the faith community? I'm not sure, Mohammed, in what context you're asking. Are you asking the role within the reference group? At that level, what we're looking for is to ensure that the perspective of the faith community is present during the conversations at the highest levels of leadership of the family planning community, to both work with countries and ensure those perspectives are raised within the country context, but also and critically within the global framework as well. Within country action plans and country work, many of those plans include working with faith communities, working on behavior change, working on overcoming cultural barriers, and all of those issues that are related to increasing demand for family planning. So those are sort of ongoing conversations where within family planning technical working groups, we hope and encourage that faith perspectives will be present. But beyond that, I think I need a little more specificity from you too, if that doesn't answer your question. Okay, Alvin has come back again. Alvin, I think you just need to call me and we can just talk together. You have a lot of questions. Will there be a directory of EAC members so we can communicate with them directly, or perhaps form online discussion platforms like Facebook groups, et cetera? So we already have that, and Rati can share the link with you.
Yep. Through the Knowledge Gateway, there's already an EAC community, so we can share that with you, Alvin.
Great. We're happy to do that. And Karen Newman, well, hello to you, Karen. And Karen just says the Rights website looks good. So Karen Hardy is with us here in the room and with Sandra, so a shout out to them. Thank you, Karen, for the positive reinforcement. Always appreciated. Oh, Alvin says he'd love to talk, but his microphone isn't working, so we'll find another time. Okay, I think that sort of wraps us up. If there are additional questions, again, please do feel free to continue to send them to Rati, and we will get back to you in writing. And again, Alvin, if you want to just give me a call, we'll find a time to talk. And we want to just thank you for your partnership. And again, the EAC very much is a work in progress. We want this to be relevant to you. We really appreciate your feedback and your collaboration on specific issues, as we said, around youth and rights, where we have had some successful collaboration. We recognize that's the tip of the iceberg. So we really do want to create this in partnership with you. So any ideas you have about how to expand that? And I also recognize that my responses to you around civil society engagement fall far short of satisfactory. So we'll get more explicit guidance back to you once we have this sorted out, because it's still very much in that desire phase without having an explicit process wrapped around it. So we will resolve that in the coming weeks and make sure that you're aware of that as well. So again, thank you for taking the time to partner with us as always, and we look forward to your feedback and ongoing collaboration, and just want to wish you a very good day, and with just a huge and sincere thank you. So goodbye to everybody. Bye-bye.